welcome everybody to our September Think and a Drink. Today our theme is Artists of Hawaii Now, and we have very, very lucky to have our co-curators, Taylour, Chang, and Marlene here with us today. And they've been so busy the past 2 weeks with interviews. So maybe if you've been watching TV, they've been all over the place doing all these interviews with TV hosts and on the radio. And the exhibition is incredible. So we're very, very excited to have them here today. As Eduardo mentioned, he will sort of be taking on the reins from here on out. But it's been really great to be here and host you guys on Zoom. I'll still be around. I'm working sort of part-time with communications and part-time with the development department. So trying some new things to sort of connect the different departments at the museum. And I guess just a reminder, you heard the little notification, this meeting is being recorded. So please just be cognizant of your video and audio at all times. Everybody is always so great about muting themselves. So if you haven't already, please do that now, just so we can hear Taylour and Marlene loud and clear. They will start the presentation shortly, and then we will leave the question and answer portion to the end. So please, if you have questions, write them in the chat, and Eduardo will help to monitor those at the end of the presentation, since there are 18 artists and 13 artworks all together for us to go through. So I'm sure there are many things that you'll have questions about along the way. But I will hand it off to Marlene and Taylour now.
Thank you so much for having us and for joining us virtually for this talk. We're really excited to share with you stories and background of how this exhibition came together and sort of the spirit of all of these artists' pieces and works. So we have a PowerPoint presentation with a lot of pictures and text that can help, bring the exhibition to life. And we hope that everyone has an opportunity to experience it in person as well. And, just let us know if ever you're at the museum, and we'd be happy if we're here to just, give you a tour in person as well. So looking forward to that. All right, I'm going to share a screen. Great. Hopefully everyone can see that. And I'm going to pass it to Marlene.
Hi, everyone. Thank you again for joining us. We're so excited to spend this time with you this evening. So I'm going to go ahead and get started.
Okay, 1 second. Not scrolling for us. One moment. Technology. Sorry, friends. Always fun. All right. Maybe this will work a little better. Okay. Does this work? Does everyone see that? All righty. Okay. There we go.
All right, here we go. Take two. So our exhibition, Artists of Hawaii Now, is, as you all are aware, there's been a long tradition of the Artists of Hawaii exhibition. It's been, I want to say, about over the 63rd iteration.
I guess since 1950.
And so the exhibition has always had the goal of really uplifting and supporting local Hawaii artists. And this, for this iteration, we really wanted to make sure that we were also focusing on themes that impact our current community that are important during this present time and place. So this exhibition was really a dynamic call to action for us, to really promote community building and community collaboration and envision future together as a community for Hawaii. So this exhibition features 18 Hawaii-based artists with 13 site-specific pieces. And like as I had mentioned earlier, at the heart of this exhibition, it was really community-centered when we were developing this exhibition. The artists encompass a broad spectrum of mediums and experience. We have some artists that have never shown before, and other artists that are featured in international collections. And in terms of mediums, we have everything from more traditional mediums such as ceramics and textiles to a lot of new media pieces that are a first for HoMA to ever be shown. So this is a group image of the artists pre-COVID. This was a gathering that we had to really bring them together, and we had like collective visioning for the exhibition, and it was really a rewarding experience for us and the artists to really start to develop that family atmosphere, that collaborative spirit between all of us.
And nobody could have anticipated the pandemic at this time. This exhibition was supposed to open a year ago, and because of the pandemic, we postponed it to this year. And we weren't sure if the artists would be able to still participate. We weren't sure whether the visions of each project was going to have to evolve, because everyone was creating their work in response to what was happening in the world around them at that time. And what was remarkable was that, pretty much almost every single artist was still in it. And the same number of projects is still realized. And no one changed their vision. Everyone had a moment to consider, how is this pandemic, how are all the challenges that our community is facing now affecting our piece and our work and our vision? And what was a resounding revelation was that the struggles that our community is facing, that we've been facing now, only made their visions and their projects that much more relevant, that much more important. So back a year ago, the title was Artists of Hawaii 2020, and it felt really appropriate that we evolved the title to be Artists of Hawaii Now, to further emphasize the importance and the relevance of these artists. Now, even in the darkest of times, they're like shining examples of creativity and brilliance. And we kind of want to lean in on the fact that this level of creativity is found at home in Hawaii. We don't have to look elsewhere. Like, great art on a world-class level is possible here in Hawaii, and that we as a museum has a responsibility to be a part of that. So, yeah. All right, so now we're gonna dive deeper into each artist and piece. So here we have Na'alehu Anthony, who is a Kanaka Maoli filmmaker, a longtime filmmaker in the community and artist. He was a crew member of the Hokulea, the Polynesian Voyaging Society, for over 20 years. And he actually spearheaded the documentation of the Hokulea's worldwide voyage over the past, within this past decade. And using footage that he captured on the Va'a as a crew member, he wanted to represent the Hokulea in the gallery's place in a way that the Hokulea has never been represented before. And so in Gallery 28, when you first enter that gallery, the first thing that you'll see is a close to life scale floor projection of the Hokulea, of as close to the actual size of the hull of the Hokulea. And you would see images of the hull of the Hokulea. You'll see very vast images of the ocean and the Va'a navigating through this very vast sea. And you'll see different perspectives of the Hokulea. Sometimes you'll feel like you're walking on to the hull of the Hokulea, and sometimes you're watching it as like a small little speck in the middle of the ocean. And what Na'alehu wanted to ask with this piece is, how do we navigate through all of the issues that are seen in the exhibition, but at the same time, how do we navigate through all of the issues and the challenges that we're facing as a community. And especially during the pandemic, sometimes we've all felt very isolated physically, spiritually, mentally during that time. But at the same time, we're also have all these beautiful opportunities to reassess our connections with each other. And that was a kind of experience that Na'alehu had on the canoe when he was on the worldwide voyage, and he wanted to bring that spirit into the gallery space, and particularly during this time, this difficult time that we're facing as a community.
So the next project that's featured in the exhibition is by an artist collective called Coppolio Capaco, otherwise translated to the people of Kaka'ako. This artist collective is made up of 3 individuals. John Montanona, who is a community builder, a leader within the houseless community. He's an organizer. He's really well known within the community as someone who creates a space for people to be able to gather, for them to feel free to come and talk story with him. He'll also cook for the community, so he'll do large potlucks for everyone. So he really is that figure that people lean on, and they feel safe with, and they look towards him as a leader. The next artist is Ara Reyes, and she is also a community organizer. She is also someone that is looked towards as a leader. She has a very strong, resilient spirit, and I think that comes out in all of her interactions. So people feel that they also look towards her for leadership. She's a great organizer. She gets things done. And I should say both Ara Reyes and John Montanona were formerly houseless. John was living on the streets for, I believe, over 20 years. And Ara was on the streets for about 7 to 9 years. And they've recently received shelter. And so, but they continue to do this work in the community. They continue to organize and help and really try to take care of the people that are still out there. And then the last artist in this collective is Noi Kanagawa. She's probably best known for as being a journalist. She is regularly featured on HPR, or Hawaii Public Radio, but she's also a practicing artist. And Noi has been really involved doing work with the houseless community for the past few years. She's really interested in capturing oral histories from various community members and really telling their story and really showing what Coppolio Capaco is about through a different perspective, through a more empathetic lens.
And so when you enter Gallery 28, so this would be in the same gallery that the Hokulea is in, if you look to your right-hand corner of the gallery, you'll see their installation. If they've created an environment with essentially 4 different parts. Maybe the most obvious, the first part you might notice is like an actual shelter that John Montanona built using found objects on the street, like how he would in any shelter that he would build for himself or for others in the Kaka'ako community. John has built hundreds of shelters in his over 2 decades of living in Kaka'ako, and he wanted to build a shelter in the gallery space, and he wanted to ask this question of, if we confront a shelter in a gallery space, will we confront a shelter on the street differently? Or what is the difference between a structure, maybe a sculpture that uses great ingenuity with minimal resources in a gallery space or in an art context, and what's the difference between that versus the kind of creativity that one has to exhibit when they're trying to make shelter for themselves on the streets with very minimal resources. So that's one component. Another component that you'll see are 2 paintings. that are on the wall that are painted by Aura Reyes. Aura is a painter and an illustrator. She has used the medium of painting as a way to get her through really tough times. And it was always been her dream since she was really young to be to have her paintings in a museum one day, and she never thought it would be possible. And being in this exhibition has allowed her to really express herself and to kind of represent her perspective, and to kind of be a representation of her own resilience and how she navigated being on the streets for many years. She painted her 2 paintings with her daughter, which is a really beautiful kind of healing, transformative experience for her. And her daughter contributed some images in the paintings that you might notice. She also wrote quotes on her painting that came from her journal, quotes that she found herself writing as she was contemplating her experiences on the streets of Capaco. The third component would be 3 different models that represents the past, present, and future of the community of houseless individuals in Capaco. So the first model, it'll kind of show you kind of how they started, where we're kind of individualized and separate and not in community with each other. The second model, you'll start to see, them forming a more sort of circular, inclusive community for themselves. And then in the third model, you'll see their vision for a future, and they call it a kauhale. And it kind of illustrates that this particular group, Coppolio Capaco, has a vision for how a houseless community can be sustained, can be a sustainable community over time. And the final component would be on the walls themselves. You'll see quotes and you'll see vinyl quotes and images that Noi Tanegawa collected to kind of pinpoint different statistics, different points of views that shed maybe a different light on the houseless issues in our community, and to really kind of communicate how so many of us here in Hawaii are only 1 paycheck away from being on the streets. That the distance between many of us in the community and those who we consider to be homeless or houseless is not actually very distant from each other, and that there's so many factors that are contributing to homelessness in our community. And so that's just sort of a breakdown of what you would see in the gallery space for this piece.
Our next artist is Linda Hess. She is a multimedia artist. She has done paintings, sculptures. She works a lot in ceramics, and lately she has been focusing a lot on installation work. So the piece you'll see in the gallery is the image you see here is just a prototype of it. So the what you'll really see in the gallery is an enclosed space. It's a very intimate enclosed room, and the room is painted a very deep red, as you see here. And on top of these walls within the room are installed 1,000 ceramic flowers that were handmade and hand painted by the artist and other close collaborators. And the inspiration for this piece was the tradition of folding 1,000 paper cranes as an act of remembrance, as an act to honor individuals. And so with her work, Linda has worked very closely with the Domestic Violence Action Center, or the DVAC. And this piece was actually in honor of survivors of domestic violence. And so this space is meant to be a very quiet space, a very introspective, contemplative space. And so the viewer is invited to enter the space one at a time. And they'll be enclosed within the walls and the curtains. And once you enter the space, you are almost overwhelmed by the sheer numbers of flowers that surround you, each flower representing an individual that has survived domestic violence. And so with this piece, Linda always talked about how domestic violence in society is usually not spoken about openly. It's usually considered to be kept kind of private and behind closed doors. So this space for her really acts as a way to honor these individuals, to acknowledge their strength and their perseverance and their beauty and their, she really just wanted to create a safe space, a beautiful space to really acknowledge and honor these individuals. And so when you are exiting the room, there's also a journal on the shelf next to the room. And visitors are invited to write anything that has come up for them while they're in the space. They can leave messages, they can write personal experiences. It's just a way for visitors to be able to release anything that has come up for them after interacting with within this space.
And here we have artist Daniel Kawaimaki. He is a artist, researcher, video game designer, and he's just he's a multi-talented individual. And what he created is a 3D printed ki'i, or 3D printed statue that's 2 feet tall, bright red, and is on a bright red platform. And this piece is in Gallery 27. And as soon as you enter that gallery, you'll confront this statue. And when you confront it in person, you'll notice on the ground a QR code, which you'll be invited to scan that QR code using your phone to enter a mobile application game. So this piece is the first mobile application game that this museum has exhibited as part of a show. When you enter the game, you'll be taken to up to 7 different levels and different time periods in Hawaii's history. And the ki'i is inspired by a legend that's associated with the island of Maui. And it's called Kui Kavala Ki'i, and that's the name that the artist Daniel Kawaimaki has given this particular ki'i, but it's inspired by the mo'olelo of Kavala Ki'i. And this was a ki'i that guarded the island of Maui, and it was struck down when the islands were being consolidated. So through this piece, Daniel is asked, or Kawila is asking questions of what does it mean to overthrow something, and what does it mean to what does it mean to decolonize ourselves using technology, and while bridging the gap between sort of present day realities and our history. This is a very complex, there's a lot of meaning and double meanings in the game and in the name and in the mo'olelo that is inspired by. But physically in the gallery space, it is quite striking and simple in the best way. It's a bright red ki'i that really catches your eye. And there's a lot of rigor and research that went into manifesting this ki'i in real life. So this is in Gallery 27.
Our next artist is Andy Burley. He is currently based in Kamuela, Hawaii. And he has been working, he's a mixed media artist, and he has been working a lot with digital media especially. And so the piece that you see in Gallery 27 as well was actually inspired by a Hawaiian flag quilt that is found in our permanent collection. And so what you'll see in the gallery is a digital representation of the quilt from our collection. And the digital representation is made up of different footage of water sources that Andy has captured throughout the islands. And the footage is digitally stitched together. So each stripe that you see within the quilt, each the crest in the center, all of those areas, those shapes are all made up by different footage of water that has been stitched together. And he has made 5 iterations of this quilt that is shown within the gallery that cycles through, and each iteration represents one of the islands that he captured the footage from. And when you're looking at the projection, you'll see brilliant blues and very deep reds. And none of this footage was, there wasn't a lot of color correction. There wasn't a lot of editing to the footage. So the colors that you see are true to what he captured, dependent on the depth of the water, the time of day, and where those water sources were located.
So Kapulani Landgraf is another artist in our exhibition in Gallery 27. And she's a very well-known artist in the community, and been exhibited all over the world. An educator, photographer, community organizer, and a curator as well herself. And the piece that she did for Gallery 27 is called Mama Kakawa, and it's a collection of 39 photographs that depict the portraits of the 39 kupuna that were arrested on protecting Mauna Kea in 2019.
We should note that the image featured here is just an example of previous work.
Yes. So when you enter the gallery, it's on one of the large walls. You'll see 39 portraits, and each portrait, the majority of those portraits were taken on the first day of court when the kupuna were going to court, and also a large majority of those photos were taken during the pandemic, and so there were some individuals who were she was unable to capture due to just safety concerns and travel concerns and other pandemic related situations. So there are about 4 images that they still represent the names of the individual, but the rest are all black and white photographs. And behind each portrait is the text of oli, of chants that were practiced during the protests on Mauna Kea in 2019. Below the images are the names of both other individuals who were protesting on Mauna Kea, and also names of individuals who signed the Ku'e petition in 1893 in protest of the overthrow of the Hawaiian Kingdom. And so one more component to this piece is to the far right-hand side of the portrait. So there's a pedestal with these yellow ribbons that each participant is invited to take with them home. And these yellow ribbons have the text "Mai poina oia'u," which means to never forget. And it's a yellow ribbon. It's in reference to a yellow ribbon that said "Mai poina" that Queen Kalani distributed in 1893 to her supporters. So that's this piece.
Our next piece is by artist Gwen Arkin. She's an artist based in Maui. Gwen is a photographer, a printmaker, and an educator. She teaches photography at the community college in Maui. And then she also is a current oceanography student. So this piece actually combines 2 of Gwen's great passions, which is oceanography and photography. So what you'll see in the gallery when you enter is a series of large textiles installed and hung from the ceiling. It's meant to be a very quiet, reflective space as well. It's very ethereal. The textiles themselves are chiffon, very thin, translucent material. And on top of these textiles, Gwen used the process of cyanotype printing. So if you're not familiar with cyanotype, an example here would be this image where it's a cyanotype on paper. Well, Gwen also used that process on the textiles. So the textiles are printed with either actual species of limu that she collected, or blown up microscopic images of the lemur species. So there's this macro and micro play happening within the textiles, and visitors are encouraged to traverse through these textiles. They're encouraged to linger a moment and really take in this oceanic environment. And as they travel towards the back of the gallery through the sea of textiles, they'll find a wall with these cyanotype prints. And on top of the wall are installed about a little over 60 cyanotype prints. And each print is a species of lemur that Gwen had gathered and printed herself. And she actually did most of these prints near the beach where she was collecting them, because a lot of these species are so fragile that they couldn't be transported. So she had to actually create the prints right there as she was collecting them. And so in the sea, you'll see a sea of blue prints, and then you'll also see 5 brown prints that were processed with the Van Dyke process. It's another photographic process. And these 5 brown prints, called the Big 5, represent the 5 invasive species that are found here in the island.
And here we're entering another artist collective. This is Christopher Kahunahana, who is one of 3 artists working on a piece called Pico. Christopher Kahunahana is a well-known filmmaker in the community, and he's made award-winning films, and Waikiki being the most recent one. And then here is Nicole Naone, who is a producer, sculptor, artist, and also a filmmaker in her own right. And then we also have Lanakila Manguil, who is an activist, creative. He's a very public figure in terms of he was on the front lines of the Mauna Kea protest, leading a lot of the oli and the protocol on the road in the protest against the 30-meter telescope. Cultural practitioner. And these 3 artists collaborate on a piece called Pico, and it's in Gallery 27. You can't miss it. It's a giant geodesic dome, white geodesic dome that's in the gallery space. And when you enter into this dome, you'll see a dome projection of the sky of the Milky Way. And then you'll also be invited to enter a virtual reality experience that'll take you to a place called Pu'ukohe on the island, on Hawaii Island, where you can see both Mauna Kea and Mauna Loa, and you're transported to this very sacred place. And inside the geodesic dome, you'll hear 5.1 surround sound of oli, of Lanakila, chanting oli and mo'olelo about the sacredness of that place. And it starts with the chant about the kumulipo, the beginning of creation, and then it goes into mo'olelo about the place that you're transported into. And this piece is asking this question of what is sacred, and it's transporting us to a place that is very sacred to them and to us in our community. And they're positioning this place using technology, using groundbreaking technology, to bring this place that is sacred into a place that is sacred for art. And they're asking this question of what is sacred to you? And they want you to kind of feel the essence of the sacredness of the place that is Pu'ukohe and Mauna Kea and Mauna Loa. The dome is meant to look like a telescope. That is intentional. But then when you enter the telescope, it's actually a completely different experience. This is a protest piece, but it doesn't sort of hit you over the head with an anti-telescope message. It just simply asks the question of what is sacred. And so it's all environmental surroundings, just wind and air and rain and chanting.
Our next piece of work is by a artist duo. They're actually a husband and wife team, Tara Ova, who is a design strategist based in Honolulu, and then Kyle Ova, who is also a programmer, software developer. And so their piece is called Journey of Phone, and it's featured in Gallery 28. It's actually the first piece that you will encounter as you enter the space. And what you'll see when you first enter the space is this beautiful custom-made computer that they built. And it's featured on top of a pedestal within a vitrine because it is an art object in its own right. It is very sculptural. And next to that computer, which is a giant brain that is consistently working and thinking as you're in the space, are 3 monitors. And on those monitors are various imagery. So the first monitor, well, I should go into what this piece is inspired by first. So this piece is actually inspired by software called reCAPTCHA. And we're all familiar with reCAPTCHA, even if we don't know it. So reCAPTCHA is a software that when you're trying to enter a website, or maybe you're trying to purchase something, there's a screen that pops up, and maybe you have to identify all the crosswalks, or you need to identify all the street lights. And based on you being able to identify the imagery, you are classified as either human or not. And I know there's been a few times where I have been classified as not human. And so this is what this piece is inspired by. So they wanted to take that technology, that type of software, that type of data collection, and translate it into their own way of being able to compute monster homes, the idea of monster homes, and what does that mean? So on the first monitor that you see next to the computer, Kyle and Kara had spent a lot of time prior to the installation of this piece driving around the neighborhoods of Kaimoti and Makiki and all over the island, capturing imagery of large homes. They could either be, they didn't want to, specifically say that they're monster homes. They were just taking images of large homes. Sometimes they were considered monster homes. Sometimes, they're Ohana homes. It's very subjective. And they fed all of these images into this computer, as well as images that were found in local real estate advertisements. And based on all of the images that were fed into this computer, they were teaching the computer how to recognize what would be considered a monster home in Hawaii. So what you'll see on the screen is images of homes that aren't actual real homes. They're amalgamations of all of these images that they fed to the computer, and then in turn, the computer spits out what it thinks is a monster home. And paired with these images are real advertisements that they sourced from Hawaii real estate advertisements. So you'll see real advertisements for large homes that say, 13 bedrooms, home with 7 bathrooms, things like that. So all of that is real text that they have sourced from advertisements. And then on the next monitor, you will see a QR code. And this is where they're asking the audience to engage with their piece. So the audience is asked to scan the QR code. And once they scan the QR code, they'll be taken to a website that they developed on the individual's phone. They'll be able to access that website and then in turn follow a set of prompts. So the prompt starts with answering a question, a Hawaii home is, and then you fill in the blank. So the audience is asked to put in their data, input their idea of what they think a Hawaii home means to them. And then they're asked to choose one of these images of this, the amalgamation of what the computer thinks is a home. And based on the input of that data, the image that they paired with what they think a home is, the computer will then develop another or generate another image that will represent what the viewer's vision for a home should look like in terms of what the computer thinks it should look like. So a lot of these images are very surreal. They're very, they're sometimes cartoonish. And they're just very interesting and mesmerizing to look at. And the inspiration behind this dreaming of home is really not to make judgment. The artist did not want to sway the audience one way or the other on, the controversy of monster homes, but really what they're really trying to ask was, what is home? What does home mean to you? What does it mean to have a home in Hawaii? What does it mean to be of Hawaii? So they really just wanted to ask more questions rather than provide answers.
And this artist is Jennifer Goya. She's an educator, a media artist, and a technologist. And her piece is Remembering Ohia. And so in Remembering Ohia in Gallery 28, you'll see two large vertical windows. And you look out these two windows and you'll see digital Ohia trees in the process of growing or dying. And on the floor, you'll be invited to step on, to engage with the piece. There are floor sensors on the ground. And what the artist is trying to raise awareness of is definitely, the plight to preserve Ohia lehua trees in our community. But she's also asking this question of how do we engage? What is our personal responsibility to engage with the issue? What is our responsibility to preserve Ohia? And that question manifests itself in the physical engagement with the piece. So the floor sensors, the audience is invited to step onto the floor sensors in front of each window. And when you step onto one floor sensor, it'll cause the tree to grow. It'll heal the tree. And then if you step on another floor sensor on another side of the window, it'll cause the tree to die. And you're meant to kind of figure that out on your own. You're meant to just sort of see, oh, what is my engagement with this piece doing to the trees? Is it helping the tree or is it not helping the tree? And she just wants to raise awareness of that type of responsibility that we have to not only remember Ohia, but to preserve Ohia. And she worked very closely with the Ohia Legacy Foundation. And during the public programming elements of the exhibition, we're going to be having workshops that teaches people how to plant Ohia trees in their backyards and in their communities. So we're hoping that guests can learn how to plant Ohia and sort of participate in the preservation of Ohia in the long term.
Our next artist is Manume Singh. He's also a multimedia artist based in Honolulu. He works a lot with digital media. He's a programmer. He does a lot of coding. And for his piece, Wages, What Are We Worth? What he's presenting are a series of digital paintings. So as you enter the gallery space, you'll see a large monitor that will present a digital painting made up of different lines and shapes that continue to transform and grow throughout the duration of 5 minutes. So for 5 minutes, there'll be a single painting that will morph and grow, and then after that 5 minutes, you'll see another digital painting that will begin, a seed that will start to begin to grow and morph again. And so each painting is actually a code that represents a wage found in Hawaii that Manu programmed into this brain, essentially, this computer. And so the wage that he programmed, as time passes, it represents the money earned through that wage, and that is how the painting grows and transforms. So there's 8 different paintings that are represented. So anything from housework, which is represented as earning 1 cent an hour, all the way up to chief executives, which are represented as owning $96.96 an hour. And so each painting, even though it starts with this seed that is very formulaic, it is, a single formula. Based on the randomness of the computer, you'll never see the same painting twice, even if it is the same weight. And when Manu was developing these paintings, he really wanted to communicate a feeling that he felt. He wanted to communicate the way he thinks it would feel if you were in this wage, earning this wage in a certain career. So personally, he really talked about, trying to really convey feelings of either freedom, maybe when you are in a higher wage gap, or maybe constraint when you're in a lower wage gap. So really communicating what it may feel like if you are this person earning this wage. And so for me personally, I know as an example, I would say there's one that it's for minimum wage, and it starts off very small. It's these series of dots that move very slowly. It feels very anxious, and it takes even within the 5 minutes, it doesn't grow very big, and it conveys this feeling of almost never being able to make any progress. It has this feeling of, the saying of you take 2 steps forward, 1 step back kind of feeling. So it's very interesting to just sit in front of this monitor and really be mesmerized by these paintings and put yourself in that idea of what would it be like if I had this, this monetary freedom or constraint.
And here we have Gay Chan, whose piece "Wanted Basket Makers Applied Here Will Train" is pretty self-explanatory. But when you enter the gallery, gallery 28, you would see you'll see a workstation, and you'll also see a giant kennel filled to the brim with bailing straps or shipping straps. And if you're unfamiliar with shipping straps or bailing straps, they are used to hold down materials that are shipped to the island. So like you see mats and containers or things like that. A lot of times the resources that are sent to the islands are strapped down by bailing straps, and the straps have no other use other than to do just that. And after they're done with it, it goes to the waste. And Gay Chan was, saw that amount of waste and was inspired to do something about it, to take the bailing straps and to transform it into something more sustainable. And so she started making baskets out of these shipping straps. And she's been doing it for a number of years now and has been training people in the community how to weave these baskets. And sort of her piece in the gallery for this exhibition is kind of one of her biggest scale, iterations of this ongoing project that she's been leading. So, she has a workstation next to the giant pile of bailing straps that are in the gallery. And all of that bailing straps are meant to be transformed into baskets by the end of the exhibition. And at her workstation in the gallery, Gay will be physically in the gallery space at certain days throughout the course of the exhibition, weaving baskets during the opening hours. And guests can talk to her, ask her questions about her process, about basket weaving, and people can sign up to learn how to weave the baskets. So we're going to be having a certain number of workshops throughout the course of the 5 months. And when Gay is not in the gallery space, there is a video on the wall that kind of showcases the process of how she makes the baskets for people to see. The baskets that she weaves during the course of the exhibition will be for sale at the museum shop. at a NLB for sale at an amount that will allow herself to pay herself a minimum wage for the labor of creating the basket. So there's like a cycle that she's creating with her piece.
And our last artist is Genevieve Sullivan. She works in sculpture. She's also an educator. She teaches sculpture at UH Manoa, HPU. And she's really known for doing very detailed, intricate pieces. And so for her installation in Artists of Hawaii Now, it's in Gallery 27. And what you see is an enclosed space that is meant to almost resemble an armory. And so she created these objects that resemble weapons, but they're inspired by medical instruments, especially those that were used on women, or should I say against women, before they really understood the female body. And so these weapons are actually quite beautiful, and it has a very intriguing contrast of these very soft and hard kinds of contrast. So she has these very detailed, beautiful, intricate enamel work and small little chainmail work with some, and also a little bit of textile with cloth and string, and then juxtaposed with these very harsh metals and angular forms. And so it creates this interesting contrast between this very soft and hard surfaces. She's known for using a lot of contrasting materials like leather and steel, and sometimes plastic. So she likes to play with this push and pull of contrasting, things that you would not necessarily seem like they fit together. She's also really interested in playing with textures. So a lot of times she'll use like foams and very soft materials contrasted with these very hard materials. And she also loves the color palette, a very soft color palette, to communicate through her work. So you often find her using a lot of neutral tones, a lot of skin tones, and a lot of very soft forms as well to kind of resemble or communicate the body, the form, the female form. And yeah, so there's about eight, I want to say there's 8 objects that are featured in this space. And as you see them, they're beautiful sculptures, but then as you look closer, you start to see how they resemble weapons such as a mace or nunchucks and slingshots. So it's this very beautiful push and pull between ideas and materials.
And that covers the scope of the exhibition. We really just breached the surface of it, and so many of these pieces are meant to be experienced in person, to be immersed within. There are a lot of environments that each artist is creating, so we really hope that you all get a chance to experience it in person. And yeah, we hope that you and our community feels proud of what Artists of Hawaii are capable of. So thank you all for listening and being with us tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marlene and Taylour. That was amazing. It's almost, there's so much there. I know we could probably spend a couple of hours. We have one of the first questions in the chat from Fred, and he said, wow, it raises so many thoughts. He sees the engagement encouraged while in front of a piece, but what's the goal for post-visit engagement? And what other programming is planned?
Great question. Yeah, so the goal really was to inspire audiences to feel motivated to take action beyond the exhibition space, and to, at minimum, learn more and be curious to learn more about the various issues that are being addressed. So there are different ways that we're kind of offering those channels. So, one way is, we'll kind of start at different levels of it. So under each artist statement is a section called acknowledgements and resources. So each artist had an opportunity to list resources and places to look into beyond the gallery space, and also acknowledging the community organizations that a number of the artists collaborated with to bring the pieces to life. The second component is, in Gallery 28, we have what we are calling a resource center, Artists of Hawaii Resource Center, and it was a collaboration with our with Vera from our museum library, and it has a selection of books from our library collection that point people that people can read and look into to learn more about the different issues that are being addressed. Also, these books are books that have inspired the artists, or have inspired the creation of the pieces. And then the public programming, as you mentioned, is a huge component of this exhibition that we've been navigating, because with the pandemic, we really wanted to have a lot of in-person gatherings, but the pandemic has made that a little bit difficult. So we've been transforming a lot of our public programming into the virtual space, like this one, and it's similar to what we're doing now. And so we have 3 community forums scheduled, as well as a suite of artist talks. And we also have a lineup of art making workshops that would be in person on site at the museum. So for the community forums, the goal is to bring together a different spectrum of artists and different leaders in the community that represent the different issues to have a cross-sector conversation about what's possible for Hawaii, a very solution-based, visionary conversation. And we're planning on doing that through Zoom. And in collaboration with different community partners, so Vai Collective, Hawaii Council for the Humanities, as well as Arts and Letters and Pu'uhonua Society are some examples of folks that we've been collaborating with to kind of create space for these conversations that we want each artist and each piece is inspiring. And then for the artist talks, again, we're planning for virtual, like Instagram Live or Zoom, Facebook streaming, where artists get to talk, go deep into their piece, and also be in conversation with each other. So we're going to be pairing artists together, maybe artists who you wouldn't think would be in dialogue with each other, but are in fact. And the artists in those talks will kind of bring to light the different connections between all the different issues that they're addressing. For the art making workshops, in collaboration with our learning and engagement department, the artists are going to be, allowing folks to kind of experience sort of the making of experiencing the craft of some of their work. And through that, people can, for instance, the ohia lehua planting, we want to train people how to plant lehua ohia in their communities. Gay Chan is going to be training people how to make those baskets so they can take that skill set outside of the exhibition. Daniel Kawaimaki is going to be doing printmaking workshops of the peva, a symbol, and sort of educating people about the importance of that peva design and some of the history behind that design. And so those are just some examples.
And also
Yeah.
with the art making workshops, for instance, with the Ohia Legacy Initiative, they'll be there with Jennifer Goya. So really being able to, also share information. And then Gwen Arkin is doing a Sayano type workshop where she'll actually have members from a local hui that does limu preservation and conservation. They'll be present at the workshop to be able to share information and also provide opportunities for community members if they want to get more involved. They'll provide opportunities for volunteers as well.
I mean, each piece has like most of the pieces have like a community organization that like we want to point people to. So Domestic Violence Action Center for Linda Hess's piece, Coppolio Capaco, the Houseless Collective, They're, Hui Aloha and is a community partner there, and they actually built a website in conjunction with their piece where people can go to learn more about the issues. So, it's kind of like the experience in the gallery is like step one, and then step two is like to learn more, and then, to consider what can I do outside of the gallery space to contribute to solutions. Yeah.
You mentioned pairing artists up. I hope you don't mean by the word pair that they are of a like mind. For instance, you in describing the pieces, and I don't know the artist, so I'm not going on anything beyond what you've said. But like for Mama Kakawa versus Dreaming of Home, I could see that the artist could have completely different notions of what belong in Hawaii means. Belong in Hawaii as all one phrase, or what does belong mean in Hawaiian culture and values? And how do you qualify? How do you be a part of that? So when you talk about pairing, I hope it's not two artists that are going down the same path that are just going to reinforce each other's sentiments.
No, I think we really want to make unexpected pairings, because we really want to try to foster those very interesting conversations, because that's when you bring not necessarily opposing but different perspectives to the table. I think that's where the most interesting conversations happen, and that's where the inklings of solutions begin to start.
Yes, that's a really great point that you make, and it's definitely something that's at the top of our mind.
Thank you. I had one question. It was a little more technical. Taking it from the concept and then actually installing it. I've seen people like running around the past few weeks. What were some of the unique challenges that you faced? One challenge and maybe an interesting solution.
Oh man.
How do we
because so many of these pieces are pushing the boundaries of what's possible in different ways, I would say every single piece there's like growing pains associated with them in the most beautiful ways, in the best ways. So we ran into a lot of technical difficulties, particularly with the new media tech. So with the dome, with the Pico, the projection dome, with even the floor projection, even like with the mobile application game, or with the all the, I think there were a number of sort of tech hurdles that we had to overcome, and we'll continue to have to overcome over time, right? These are like we've never had a mobile application game in a museum before. We never had a virtual reality experience in a 360 dome before, so we're kind of, we're in the process of kind of groundbreaking in that way. There's a lot of, we make mistakes and then we learn from them, and then we just have to keep going. It's definitely took a lot of energy out of us to like pull through. I gotta say, like, we knew it was going to be hard, but we didn't know it was going to be like as hard as it ended up being. So it
was kind of interesting though, because some of the projects that we thought would be the easiest install, they had hiccups, and some of the projects that we thought would be relatively difficult were fairly smooth. So like for instance, Linda Hess's piece, where the install team had to install 1,000 ceramic flowers onto a tiny enclosed room. You can imagine, 3 guys bumping up against each other trying to install these flowers in a perfect grid. We thought that was going to be difficult and fairly taxing for them, but it was actually one of their easier installs compared to some of the other things. And then for instance, Gwen Arkin's piece, which was the textiles hanging from the ceiling, we thought that was going to be a smooth, easy sailing, and come to find out, some of the the armature that it hung from, the heights were a little bit off, so then they had to go back and readjust. So yeah, I think there's surprises and hiccups with every piece there.
And sometimes the hiccups led to like solutions that we would have never thought of. It was almost like meant to be type of hiccups. Like, well, with the projection dome, it was supposed to just be a projection dome. There wasn't supposed to be virtual reality in it. But that virtual reality component, it was a solution to limitations that we were confronting with the projection dome. And it was a rather last minute pivot. But it's a pivot that actually made the piece to be truly breaking new grounds, not just on a local level, but on like a world-class level. Like there just really hasn't been a virtual reality experience in a immersive dome like that really ever. And this was like experts telling us this as we were, kind of working through it. It kind of feels like it's a miracle that this exhibition came to be on time in the way that it is. Definitely during the process, we were like, maybe we shouldn't have picked 13 projects and 18 artists. Like that was going a little, but at the end of the day,
I think we couldn't have had this exhibition happen if we didn't have, like, all the 13 projects are so important and they all fit so well together that we can't imagine having this exhibition minus any one project or minus any artist. I think it had to be all or nothing.
Yeah, that was fantastic. I almost felt when seeing it that it could be like I could go almost 13 different times, because the experiences and the way that I interacted was different, and what I got out of it. The 1,000 flowers in particular, you couldn't really tell in the presentation, although you alluded to it. It really was like a sanctuary to go in there, and that was almost like a religious experience, that you could just do that one piece and feel it and then come back another time.
Yeah, that's very intuitive of you, because actually when Linda was first talking about the lighting of her piece, she really wanted the lighting to reflect candlelight, and she mentioned, that resembling somewhat of a sanctuary, or the candles that you would light, if you're a Catholic in a church. So yeah, that's very intuitive of you.
And so I want to open it up. Are there other questions folks have? There's a comment in the chat box about the social justice themes, and I think that really, follows on. Oh, I see Susan Palmore has a question. Let's see if I can unmute. Yeah, there we go.
I unmuted myself. Thank you. Thank you, Edward. I'm interested. I would say most of the projects have a very interesting and often leading new technology aspect to it, number one. Number two, I think most address issues that are very common in our community or in the broader community, almost addressing social, economic, political issues. So I wondered whether this was a part of your dream when you began working on the project, and thus was these responses in reaction to your call for submissions, or did it develop differently? What have been the surprises for you in terms of the development of these projects?
I mean, it was definitely, we knew for sure that we wanted to curate artists and works that were addressing social justice issues. That was definitely in the original vision. We really wanted the exhibition to feel like it was not afraid to go down the path of, addressing issues that make people feel uncomfortable. And at the same time, we wanted we wanted people to feel inspired and feel a sense of hope that, oh, there might be solutions through these really difficult questions, you know. And I think the part about whether things that surprised us,
I think what really surprised us was how you mentioned in the beginning, you know, when COVID happened, you know, it was really surprising to see how much the artist proposals didn't change, how more resolute they were in really communicating what they had originally intended.
They had more time to think about it also.
Yeah.
So to plan, which
Yeah.
so they didn't change their idea, but they may have had a more sophisticated, what I would call solution or art, a way to address it in the art world.
Yes, definitely.
Thank you.
Can you talk a little bit about the PICO? I understand there were some new viewing guidelines.
Oh, I don't know if there's new viewing guidelines, but we've been finessing it, you know, because not everybody has experienced virtual reality before with the headsets, and you know, we're trying to kind of hone the run of show, yeah, and you know, today was our first day, you know, doing it, you know, for a general public, and it went really well. And you know, we're noticing things like, oh, okay, we should add that into, you know, the description, or we should add that into the instructions to make it more smooth and more comfortable, and you know, so yeah.
Right, and Tori says that people should book their viewing time.
Yes, yeah. So yeah, it's because it is like there are showing times. It's not something that's on repeat constantly, and only 4 people can enter at any given time. So you know, every day we'll have set showing times that it will be displayed on the wall, and so you'll have to sign up for it. And you know, right now at the moment you have to physically sign up for it in the gallery space there, and we're trying to develop a way where you can do that virtually, but not quite ready yet. Yeah, but we do expect it to be quite popular once you know, the word continues to get out.
Great, thank you. The other piece that I noticed today that had that you couldn't quite tell in your presentation, that moving water, my beloved flag, paired, as you said, with the piece from the permanent collection. That was really like trippy, and how the water, how the colors were completely, you know, almost like a photograph of the piece that it stands next to. And all of that movement, it felt like being at the ocean and watching the sea move.
You can tell the story about the quilt. Oh yeah, I just want to give a shout out to Tori, who's in the room, who helped us, you know, with hanging the quilt, and also, you know, discovering the quilt that inspired the artist. Yeah, about, you know, 2 years ago, we you know, Andy, the artist, wanted to you know, respond to a piece in our collection. And so Tori was generous enough to schedule time to show Andy a different set of, you know, of the Ku'uhai Aloha quilts that we have in our collection. And what was really kind of moving was that the quilt that inspired the artist the most was kind of like wasn't meant to actually be shown to him. It was kind of a mistake that it was brought out as sort of a happy accident, because the quilt has a stain on it, and you'll see it, you know, if you see it in person, there's like a sort of a brown sort of stain on it. And I guess, you know, because of that, it would, you know, be deemed, you know, not exhibition worthy because it has that imperfection. But that was the quilt that really stood out to Andy, and that was the quilt that he wanted to bring to life. And so it was like, you know, if it weren't for Andy and that connection, you know, that quilt might have been, you know, left in the vault and, you know, not, you know, really displayed. So it was really cool to see Andy kind of shed light on an otherwise, forgotten about quilt. And so that felt like it was meant to be. And yeah, it's so cool to see like the waves undulating in the digital quilt and how it kind of like, is a response to like the undulations in the fabric of the original quilt itself. And they're displayed right next to each other. But yeah, really want to mahalo Tori for all of your help.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, that's a great segue as we wrap up tonight's program, because Tori is going to be headlining next month's I Think in a Drink, talking about the fashion of Hawaii. And so I want to let you know that Tori will be front and center next month for Think in a Drink. And then also coming up on the 23rd, I believe it's going to be The Great Wave will be on view. And if you haven't seen it, this will be your time to see it because it will be out for, I think, about 2 weeks. And then it's going back into the vaults for several years and not until our 100th anniversary. So with that, if there's any final questions, otherwise I'm going to thank everyone so much. As I said, you folks all make these art and learning possible, and we couldn't do it without you. We look forward to seeing you. Please do come and see the Artists of Hawaii now. It's a fantastic exhibit. Come like multiple times. You will really get something out of it each time. So thank you everyone for participating tonight, and please don't hesitate to contact me or anyone on the team. Thanks so much. Aloha and good evening.